All right, all right. Happy Wednesday, as best as we can. Social studies, current events. Mm, drive some folks to drinking. But anyway, we are moving right along in the 12 Powers of Man. This chapter is called The Will is the Man. Okay? And so we start off by our caption is quoted from an ancient metaphysical teaching, the origin of which is lost in antiquity. The idea is that the development of the will is possible only through the development of the mind as a whole. And as man is mind, the will is the man. This conclusion is reached because will moves to action all the other faculties of the mind and seems to be the whole process. However, a careful analysis of the various factors entering into an action reveals other equally important attributes of man, and we cannot wholly admit that the will is the man. The will is undoubtedly the focal point around which all action centers when there is harmony of mind, but the rule has been accepted with schools of philosophy from most of ancient times down to the present that the will and the understanding are very closely related. The understanding comprehending all our speculative, the will, all our active powers. Let me keep reading. This close relationship is symbolically taught in the Bible. This close relationship is symbolically taught in the Bible, and it appeals to man's reason and is confirmed by his observation. Jacob, representing the I am, I will be what I will be, had 12 sons, one of whom was Joseph, the dreamer. Joseph represents the imagination by which all forms and shapes are brought into manifestation. In the development of the mind, certain faculties are given prominence. After they run their race, other faculties that have been held in reserve come forward. When the period of rest comes, the scriptures recite that a certain one died old and full of days. As man goes forward in his unfoldment, there is sometimes a tendency towards the surface of consciousness or the phenomenal and a gradual loss of interest in the original sources of action. The phenomenal phase of creation is so interesting that man sometimes becomes bewildered in its study or its pleasure, and the originating cause may be ignored to the point of forgetfulness. This cessation of creative activity by the imagination, Joseph, is described in these words. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. This means, metaphysically, that when the imagination in a lifespan has fulfilled its mission as a creative power, it falls asleep. But it is preserved in the realms of darkness, that is, Egypt. Joseph's number is 11. He was the 11th son, and his age when he stopped active work and fell asleep, 110, represents the completeness of the dispensation of that faculty's activity. The cipher indicates an endless capacity for expression. The figure given as the age of a biblical character usually represents the subject's place in his evolution. Joseph completed his evolution to the 11th degree plus. The cipher means that he has more to demonstrate. Jesus' number is 12. He was wise at the age of 12. Adam was third in the Godhead, God, Christ, man. He lived 930 years according to the scriptural chronology. This number tells us that he is third in the Trinity, has the capacity of the 12-fold man, but has unfolded only 3 of the 12 faculties. The order of the numbers indicates the harmony of his unfoldment. In this instance, it was orderly. The naught denotes future progress uninterrupted. Seth, the son whom Adam begat in his own likeness, after his image, represents the awakening of spiritual consciousness. Then began men to call upon the name of Jehovah. Seth's years were 912. Here the Trinity and the 12-fold man are epitomized, and we see that Seth was the birth in Adam of Adam's own original character. Even the image and likeness of Elohim in the figure 9, the Trinity, is repeated 3 times, once for each of its once for each of its identities, God, Christ, man. Then the 12 powers of man are added. Again, the total of the digits is 12, the number of divine man demonstrated. We have called attention to the metaphysical meaning of the chronology of these biblical characters in order to illustrate more fully the manner in which the faculties are developed. It will be seen that in man is implanted the likeness of God, which man develops in a long series of personalities. The process of forming a soul may be compared to the development in a photographic negative of the image that has been imprinted upon the sensitive plate, but cannot be seen until it has been put through a regular developing process. When Adam had a spiritual awakening, he perceived the truth of his identity in God, and thereby begat Seth, the original image and likeness of spiritual man, imprinted upon him by the word of creative mind. Give me just a moment. Okay. There we go. Imprinted upon him by the word of creative mind. Then the worship of Jehovah was restored in man's whole consciousness for a time at least. Coming down the chronological stream, we find that Joseph's place was taken by 2 sons, and Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh. For, said he, God hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. The mother of these sons was Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, Egyptian priest of On. Asenath means peril. She represents the feminine or love side of the natural man. From this, intricate symbology, we discern that two faculties of the mind were given birth. The eldest son, Manasseh, had power to forget, to erase by denial through an understanding of truth all the accumulated burden of thoughts, even to that of heredity, all my father's house. The other son, Ephraim, could add to by affirmation and make fruitful the land that seemed to be a place of affliction. These two sons of Joseph inherited his allotment in the promised land, which symbolizes the perfected body. The front brain is the field of operation for these closely related faculties. Imagination, understanding, and will. When man's will is working strongly, he corrugates his brow, and his quick understanding causes his eyes to flash. When the imagination is subjective and spiritual, and the will and the understanding are objective and alert, we have the creative artist. Then the understanding develops its greatest freedom and originality. It is no longer bound by the traditions of the past in literature, art, music, drama, science, or religion, but launches out into the deep and brings up the pearl of great price, original creative genius, and life. Then the energetic will makes fruitful by its activity all the inspirations of the awakened man. These two closely related forces of the mind are dominant in the race because their practicality is necessary in man's free development. If the imagination were wholly in command, it would eventually run into a riot of daydreams or fanciful schemes that could not be worked out successfully in a world where natural law is inexorable. You can't separate natural law. It is this peril, asenath, that the mind considers and brings forth in sequence will and understanding. Here's a quote. "The highest and most excellent thing in man," says Goethe, "is formless, and we must guard against giving it shape in anything save noble deeds. Man is a free agent in the possession and the use of the faculty of will. Freedom of will has been variously regarded and defined. It is the subject of volumes of theological literature, and also the rock on which religionists have split. The theory of predestination relieves man of all responsibility. If God has fixed every act of man's existence, then there can be no mental or moral freedom. If man cannot determine the character of his acts, he has neither understanding nor will. He is a puppet. If man cannot determine the character of his acts, he has neither understanding nor will. He is a puppet. The understanding and the will should be especially active in one who would master the sensations of the body. Potiphar's wife represents the sense consciousness that tempts us to meet its desires and, when we deny it, has us imprisoned. This means that when a certain habit in the sense consciousness is refused expression, it reacts and for a time seems to prevent our expressing even the good. But let us patiently bide our time. The higher will yet show its God-given power. The several visits of Joseph's brothers to Egypt for corn and the final reconciliation are symbolical representations of the manner in which we make connection with the obscured vitality within the organism and finally bring all our faculties into conjunction with it. Volumes might be written with Joseph as a text. In his history, as given in Genesis, some of the most interesting processes of regeneration are symbolized. This hidden realm within the subconsciousness is in an Egyptian or obscured state to most of us. Yet it is a great kingdom, and its king is Pharaoh, ruler of the sun, or the brain and nerve center, which physiology names the solar plexus. This is the brain of the physical man, and it directs the circulation, digestion, assimilation, and so forth. Students of mind have discovered that the solar plexus is the organ through which a ruling thought in the head is carried into the body. He of the hard heart, who would not let the people go, is human will, acting through the solar plexus, or city of the sun. Now, let me pause for a second. Going back a little bit to, let's see. This hidden realm within the subconscious is in an Egyptian or obscured state to most of us, yet it is a great kingdom, and its king is Pharaoh, ruler of the sun. Nope, further back. Okay, Potiphar's wife represents the sense consciousness that tempts us to meet its desires, and when we deny it, has us imprisoned. This means that when a certain habit in the sense consciousness is refused expression, it reacts and for a time seems to prevent our expressing even the good. This puts me in mind of something that Don Miguel Ruiz, in his book, The Four Agreements, talks about when he says there are two opposing senses in the body that once we basically once we do the shadow work, when we understand why we have certain blocks and we take the logical steps to get from behind those blocks, that we're no longer in conflict with ourselves. So say you have a project that you want to complete, but you have certain fears related to different aspects of this project, so it slows you down or stops you completely. It may be subconscious. You don't realize that you're procrastinating for a particular reason, but you are procrastinating, or you have a creative block because there's something within you that has a fear or anger or a sense of lack that needs to be understood, addressed, and cleared so that you can move forward with the project that you want to complete. Two opposing sides, the conscious and the subconscious, sometimes have things, that work against each other. So it's part of our needing to be conscious of ourselves and why we do the things that we do, to constantly work through what ends up being stumbling blocks for us, or recognizing when we're getting in our own way, recognizing when we are fearful of success, maybe fearful of the challenge that's put before us or that we put before ourselves. Being constantly aware of why we do the things we do, how we're doing them, and what we can do to relieve blockages. Examine our lives, see what the issues are, address them so that we can move forward and move past it. I'm still reading Will Smith's book, and he talks about how some of his friends and associates, the higher they climbed with him, moving towards the success that was building in hip hop at the time that him and Jazzy Jeff were doing their thing. Some people couldn't take the heat, didn't want to move past their inner fears, and so they fell off or fell behind, turned around and walked away. It was a personal decision that they had to make. There was a period of time that he had to work that out for himself. I mean, so much had happened. He lost some friends to a drug raid, was losing his house to the IRS and tax problems because he didn't pay his taxes for a period of time. And their third album had flopped. So, going from being famous and of notoriety to being famous, but, not having the notoriety, what have you done for me lately type thing. He had to take a break, figure out what was going on. He had help. We can elicit help. Okay. He had help, and it took him a period of time, but he worked through it. And then he had a friend that constantly wanted to put him in front of people who could lead him to his next open door. He wasn't trying to get up and do anything, but he had these people motivating him. Like, look, you can't sit still forever. Whatever money you have is drying up month by month. You need to get up and do something. So he ended up doing that, and it led to an open door with Quincy Jones and Mr. Medina, and getting to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So just a little sidebar there. Sometimes we have inner conflicts that will slow us down, and if we don't address it, it'll keep us from moving higher in our personal rankings, because we're not in competition with other people. Most of the time, we're in competition with ourselves, because those other people are thinking more of themselves than they're thinking of us. So psychologically, we are really just in competition with ourselves. So, happy sidebar. Stay aware and conscious of yourself, and move through whatever it is you have to move through in order to continue to move forward in your life and growing into your best self. Alrighty. Okay, so this is the brain of the physical man, and it directs the circulation, digestion, assimilation, and so forth. Students of mind have discovered that the solar plexus is the organ through which a ruling thought in the head is carried into the body. He of the hard heart, who would not let the people go, is human will, acting through the solar plexus, or city of the sun. The spiritual life in the subconscious, children of Israel in Egypt, is often prevented from expressing itself by the opposition of the will. If the understanding decides that what it conceives to be the natural law shall be the limit of expression, there is further bondage and there are harder tasks. Any hard, dictatorial, or willful state of mind will harden the heart. Are we back in order? Okay. This state of mind acts through the solar plexus, the distributing station of building forces of the body, and thereby brings its limitations upon the whole system. Hardened arteries are the result of hard thoughts, and this hardness originates in the will. Jehovah represents the law of the I am in action. The ambiguity in the term motive has caused much of the controversy that has raged over free will. The champions of free will commonly suppose that before performing an act, a man is affected by various motives, none of which necessarily determines his act. Their opponents, on the other hand, argue that there is no such thing as this unmotivated choice. Some hold that free will proper consists of choice only as between higher and lower good. Some regard it as consisting in the power to do as one pleases or chooses. Others define it as the power to do or to choose as one should. According to some academic metaphysicians, the freedom of the will includes the power to act contrary to all of one's own motives or inclinations or tendencies, this power being inherent in the will. It is readily seen that this thing called motive is another name for understanding, and that it is a necessary adjunct to that faculty. But not all people use understanding as the headlight for both motive and will. The undisciplined mind feels the impulse that lies behind motive and acts without considering either cause or effect. This is partaking of the knowledge of good and evil without heeding the voice of wisdom, the sin of Adam, undeveloped man. Boy, that puts me in mind of current events. Let me go back. Okay. The ambiguity in the term motive or understanding has caused much of the controversy that has raged over free will. The champions of free will commonly suppose that before performing an act, a man is affected by various motives or understandings, none of which necessarily determines his act. Their opponents, on the other hand, argue that there is no such thing as this unmotivated choice. Some hold that free will proper consists of choice only as between higher and lower good. That seems to me kind of shallow in a way of thinking. Some regard it as consisting in the power to do as one pleases or chooses. Others define it as the power to do or to choose as one should. Why can't it be both? Or a complicated combination of both? Wah, wah, wah. According to some academic metaphysicians, the freedom of the will includes the power to act contrary to all of one's own motives or inclinations. So if you feel like you want to go commit a crime, but you stop yourself from doing that, then that is an example of free will. This power being inherent in the will, it is readily seen that this thing called motive is another name for understanding, and that is a necessary adjunct to that faculty. I would say yes. You need to understand why you want to do the things you do, why you're having the impulses you're having. Hopefully you have more than a short-term thinking. Hopefully you have more than momentary just acting out or a crime of passion, let's say. But not all people use understanding as the headlight for both motive and will. So to me, that says some people are emotionally driven. Rather than thinking through the long-term meaning behind their actions, or no, rather than processing any short-term or long-term consequences to their actions, they go ahead and act purely off of emotion, which is kind of why, oh my gosh, I have experience both in the church and in the mosque. And I had a gentleman ask me one day, you know, where did you have more fun? And I'm like, the hell? Where did I have more fun? Fun shouldn't be an issue necessarily when you're in the process of worship. But his thing was, where did you get the most emotionally excited, you know, where you could sing and clap hands and become all joyous, versus having a more sedated worship process, you know? And I'm like, if I'm going to pray, I'm going to pray. I don't need to have fun while I'm doing it. The fun may be nice. It's an emotional experience. So back to my original point, people moving off of emotions more than thinking through why they want to do the things that they're doing will act in situations like, you know, okay, they hate the fact that they feel that somebody is outnumbering them or overpowering them. So they're going to run off and reduce their numbers, kill people off randomly, drive 200 miles to kill some people. You have no idea who they are, what their lifestyles are. They have no personal effect on you on a daily basis. But in your head, you feel like they're closing in on you. So you act out. Current events. As opposed to someone who can sit down and say, okay, human nature, if some people are more concerned long term with building a career, managing their finances, not having children, then they're going to probably start producing children later on in life and limit the number of children that they produce. I know of someone who, he had his son, he had his daughter. He said, my wife and I have reproduced ourselves. We're done. Okay. And then there's other people who have as many children as the Lord will provide and provide for. And so they have higher numbers. It's a personal choice. It's a cultural choice. It's a personal and cultural choice, and you have the results thereof. So if us as a group, let's say, I read an article a few years ago talking about the few amount of Japanese children that are, you know, the Japanese birth rate has dropped tremendously. Well, if they're not interested in getting married, if they're career focused, if they're finding their joy as individuals, entertaining themselves in men's groups and women's groups exclusively, if they don't feel that they have the finances, or maybe they don't have the social connections to marry who they should marry, who they want to marry, whatever, the likelihood of them producing children is lower. Okay. That doesn't mean that they necessarily have to cross borders to other South Asian nations and start killing people off because their personal numbers are not, reproducing as fast. The situation is what it is. They're living their best life as single people. And not everybody is going to have children. And not everybody's going to have children early. How do you process? This is the thing. How do you process the circumstances that you find yourself in? And do you, in processing it, processing it in a way that is not emotional, you're not going to rush out and murder other people to reduce their numbers because your numbers aren't producing as fast as theirs. Moving right along. My little soapbox, and I got another video to do after this for my other channel. I didn't know what to say on Monday, and I got distracted. But I'm going to be over there after this because I had a couple days to think about it. And this is playing right into the knowledge that I needed. Ha ha ha. So, okay. So the undisciplined mind feels the impulse that lies behind motive and acts without considering either cause or effect. This is partaking of the knowledge of good and evil without heeding the voice of wisdom. No wisdom in rash emotional actions. The sin of Adam, undeveloped man. Understanding may be illumined by the Christ mind, and thus receive the light that lighteth every man coming into the world. Without this light, man breaks the law in nearly every act. The divorcement of understanding from will has led to endless controversies between those who have written and debated about the necessity for man's having free will, and those who, because of the evils that have come upon man through ignorant willing, have advocated the utter effacement of the will. We do not need less will, we need more understanding. Jesus, the spiritual light, showed Thomas, intellectual understanding, the wounds that ignorance had inflicted upon the innocent body. Jesus' apostles represented his own faculties of mind. When he called them, they were ignorant and undisciplined children of the natural world. But the image and likeness of the creative mind was on them to discipline them in the wisdom of the Christ, the spiritual I am. More commentary towards our current events. It came to me, a term that is used in Islamic studies, disease of the heart. And I feel that there has been growing a disease of the heart that allows humans to see others as the other, not like themselves, not connected to the Most High, where they don't even necessarily recognize their own connection to the Most High. And a lot of our wisdom grows out of recognizing our connection, how constant it is, the fact that we can increase our understanding of the relationship and grow in that relationship, becoming more like the Most High, being in the behaving in the image of God, behaving in the image of Christ. There's definitely a disconnection when we are motivated by emotions that lead to murderous thoughts. There's a disease of the heart that misses the fact that the person that you're looking to destroy is another creation of the Most High and was put here with a purpose and is living out that purpose, either as an active example of what to do or as an active example of what not to do. The disease of the heart that leaves humankind in an immature spirituality, an immature understanding of who they are, whose they are, and why they are. This is coming together. I hope that a lot of people come across this video, because as I'm developing in my understanding of it, I think it'd be very effective, because the process of the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may peace and blessings be upon him, he spent 20 years on building people's faith, 20 years building their understanding of their connection to the Most High, so that when it came to the point of outlawing alcoholism, those who were regular drinkers of alcohol, their faith was so strong, their connection, their understanding of their connection to the Most High was so strong, they gave it up immediately. Whatever they had, they spat it out of their mouths. Whatever was in their houses was dashed out into the street. And that's because he took the time to build up their faith, their understanding of their connection, their understanding of why they were put here. Let me keep reading. As the executive power of the mind, human will is the negative pole of spiritual decision. Right here is where those who study man from a personal viewpoint fail in their estimate of his power and his accountability. As mortal living in a material world, he seems circumscribed and limited in capacity and destiny. Philosophers have studied man in this cage of the mind, and their conclusions have been that he is little better than a reasoning animal. But there is a higher and truer estimate of man, and that estimate is made from what the academic school of philosophy would call the purely speculative side of existence. Failing to discern his spiritual origin, they fail in estimating his real character. As a product of the natural man, will is often a destructive force. Nearly all our systems of training children have been based on breaking the will in order to gain authority over the child and the obedience from him. I like that Don Miguel Ruiz uses the word domestication to describe the training process of humans raising their children, of humans mentoring, peer pressuring, convincing others in their community to conduct themselves in a particular way so things move smoothly, or more, so things move in a more organized fashion. It's interesting that whenever there's a military coup, the military is trying to get civilians to be more in line on their program. as opposed to, letting them conduct themselves in the way that they're supposed to as civilians. Civilians doing civilian things are not going to live their lives militaristically. There's a reason, there's a need for the military discipline. But it's not something that has to be reinforced across all of the society. It's not the place for it. Babies are not going to be on a very disciplined program. They're very self-centered. They're going to be explorative and, learn by experience, learn by interacting with other children and with the adults around them. And so it's good to have a variety of backgrounds to observe. Let me keep reading. 46 minutes. Oh. Nearly all our systems of training children have been based on breaking the will in order to gain authority over the child and obedience from him. We should remember that the right to exercise freedom of will was given to man in the beginning, according to Genesis, and that will should always be given to its original power. That will should always be given its original power and liberty. It is possible, however, for man so to identify his consciousness with his divine mind that he is moved in every thought and act by that mind. Jesus attained this unity when he realized that he was willing not in the personal, but in the divine. The importance of recognizing our relationship with the Most High, with the divine, the Creator. He said, "Not my will, but thine be done." In Islam, that's letting your ears be the ears, that Allah hears with. Your mouth, the mouth that Allah speaks with. Your feet, the feet that he moves with. Letting your whole body, your whole experience be in line with the will of the Most High. And have it be a harmonious and pleasurable experience. Okay. Many sincere Christians have tried to follow in the way of Jesus, and they have negatively submitted their will to God, but they have not attained the power or the authority of Jesus by doing so. The reason is that they have not raised their will to the positive spiritual degree. Jesus was not negative in any of his faculties, and he did not teach a doctrine of submission. He gave to those who went forth preaching the gospel the power and authority of the Holy Spirit. In Mark 16:16 through 18, it is recorded that Jesus says, "He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. But he that believeth he that disbelieveth shall be condemned." Okay, let me go back. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that disbelieveth shall be condemned. That sounds to me, baptism is being symbolically washed in the blood on God's program willingly. And disbelieving, not believing that you have a personal connection to the Most High, not behaving in accordance with that. So you're more on your impulsive, animalistic way of living. "And these signs shall accompany them that believe. In my name shall they cast out demons, shall they speak with new tongues. They shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall in no wise hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover." Symbolically, because the Bible is written in parables, which is a bunch of symbolism that describes other ideas. You have to understand the cultural context, the circumstantial context. And so when I read this, I see in my name they shall cast out demons. Working in the I am consciousness with other people, you'll help them do their shadow work so that they can recognize the things that are holding them back, recognize the things that are separating them from their relationship with the Most High, what ideas they were given that are self-defeating, what ideas they were given that they accepted as truth that has been holding them back ever since. They shall speak with new tongues. They will speak words of affirmation, words that promote their growth and development. They shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall in no wise hurt them. Taking up a serpent. The serpent to me says Kundalini awakening. When you see the caduceus, it is symbolic. You know, it's a medical symbol. It's related to the tree of life. It's related to the diagram of the tree of life. And so the serpent moving upward is the opening up of the different chakras that allow you to live more fully as the highest form of human being in connection with the Most High. Okay. Drinking of any deadly thing, if you take in somebody else's idea of who you should be and what you should be doing, that's killing off your own spirit. If you've ever been in a relationship that limited you, you can't do this, you can't do that, you're being side-eyed and looked down upon, it's deadly to your spirit. So But if you recognize your position with the Most High, hearing that type of information, being in that type of situation will not kill off your spirit, because you know who you are, you know whose you are, and you know how you're supposed to be in that relationship with the Most High, not in that relation with the person that's trying to kill your spirit to possibly make themselves feel better. It shall in no wise hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, energetic healing, Reiki, as Jesus did, speak healing onto someone from a distance, and they shall recover. We must believe in the higher powers and be immersed in the omnipresent water of life. If we fail to exercise faith in things spiritual, we are condemned to the prison of materiality. There is so much that we miss. It's the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. They're supposed to be worked together on a case-by-case basis. The spirit of the law and the letter of the law. And as I said, the Bible is written in parables. A lot of it is symbolism. If you don't understand the symbolism, it's easy to lead yourself and other people astray. Get yourself a Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. Metaphysical Bible Dictionary will clear up a lot of the symbolism that we've been taught in erroneous ways. Some Christians believe that God's will towards men varies, that his will changes, that he chastises the disobedient and punishes the wicked. This view of God's character is gained from the Old Testament. Jehovah was the tribal god of the Israelites, as Baal was of the Philistines. Men's concepts of God are measured by their spiritual understanding. The Jehovah of Moses is quite different from the Father of Jesus, yet they are spiritually one and the same. It is not the will of our Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones, this is a quote, "It is not the will of our Father in heaven, who is in heaven, that one of these little ones should perish," is the teaching of Jesus. He bore witness that the will of God is that men should not suffer, that through him they should have complete escape from sin, which is living contrary to your personal nature. What works for you, what is okay for you, that is not in conflict with anyone else, that does not infringe on other people's movements and thought processes. Sickness, being off your square, know who you are and stand. What is the way that Pastor Michael says it? Hold your position. Know who you are and hold your position. And even death. So through him they should have complete escape from sin, sickness, and even death. Spiritual death, emotional death. Here's a quote. "God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth on him shall not perish, but have eternal life." The sin, sickness, suffering, and death that men experience are not punishment willed by God. They are results of broken law, living out of alignment with the will of the Most High, not having a proper understanding of your relationship with the Most High. The law is good. Men have joy, satisfaction, and life in everlasting harmony when they keep the law. Creation would not be possible without the rules governing the created. It is error for anyone to submit his will to the control of any personality. The personal exercise of will by personal understanding is short-sighted and selfish. Hence, it is never safe to allow oneself to be led by the direction or advice of another. Practice the presence of God until you open your consciousness to the inflow of the omnipresent. God is always with us. We just need to tap in and listen to our guidances. All-knowing mind. Open your consciousness to the inflow of the omnipresent, all-knowing mind. Then affirm your unity with that mind until you know and fully realize through the many avenues of wisdom just what you should do. This acquirement of a knowledge of the divine will is not the work of an instant. It results from patient and persistent spiritual study, prayer, and meditation. Even Jesus, with his exalted understanding, found it necessary to pray all night. All who have found the peace and power of God have testified to the necessity of using prayer in the soul's victory. One should not intellectually will to bring about results for oneself or for another. The difference between the personal will and the universal will can be known by one who practices thought control in the silence. Affirmations made in the head alone are followed by a feeling of tension, as if bands were drawn across the forehead. When this state of mind sinks back into the subconsciousness, the nerves become tense. If the practice is continued, nervous prostration follows. Stubborn, willful, resistant states of mind congest the life of flow. They are followed by cramps and congestion. The will often compels the use of the various organs of the body beyond their normal capacity. So you'll even develop a sickness in yourself if you're living contrary to how you're supposed to be living. One person's truth is not another person's truth based on their individual experiences and their relationships with the Most High. Okay? And the results are found in strained nerves and strained muscles and impaired sight and impaired hearing, Disobedient children have earache, showing the direct results that self-will has on the nerves of the ear. Deaf persons should be treated for freedom from willfulness and obstinacy. In the present state of race consciousness, all people use the intellectual will to excess. The remedy is daily relaxation, meditation, prayer. Will as exercised by man is the negative pole of the great executive force of the universe. The recognition of this in silent meditation opens the will to the inflow of this mighty moving principle, and the power that moves to action the members of the body reaches into the invisible realm of ideas and controls the elements. It was comprehension of the will universe that enabled Jesus to say to the wind and the waves, "Peace, be still." And I have a feeling that that all was internal. The wind and the waves inside the body that was unsettled because, there was things going on externally affecting the internal body. And it needed to be aligned properly. A proper mental state, a proper understanding, a proper focus really helps to be able to relax your body fully, mentally, internally, energetically. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are the inalienable rights of man, and they should never be interfered with. Hypnotism, mesmerism, and mediumship are based on the submission of one will to another. The one who desires control demands another's submission in mind and body to his own willed thoughts and words of directive power. The effect on the one who submits is always weakening, and if continued, results in a mental negation that makes him the victim of evil influences, too numerous to mention. "Not my will, but thine be done" is one of the most far-reaching affirmations of Jesus, and those who follow him and keep his sayings are finding great peace and relaxation of mind and body. Jesus, the Almighty Helper, is always present with those who are earnestly seeking to be Christians and to keep the divine law. And with that, that is the end of this chapter. The next chapter that we'll be starting is called Spiritual Law and Order. Alrighty. So, 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 28, 29, 30 seconds. Thank you for hanging in if you've made it this long. There was a lot in there. Feel free to rewind it back, listen to it again several times, because some of these things do take a minute to soak in properly. I mentioned that I was going on my other channel. Current events. Monday, I had some stuff going on, and I wasn't focused. I didn't know what to talk about necessarily. And then Tuesday happened. So here we are, Tuesday into Wednesday. And so I'm going to give my bit of commentary, what came to me over the last 2 days. If you'd like to pop over there to Pull Your Power Back on both YouTube and Instagram, you can do that. If you've gained any benefit from sitting with me, please follow, subscribe, like, share, hit the notification bell so you know when I get on here, and return. Okay? Be well. I will talk to you soon. Thank you for joining me.